In this video, we're going to talk about active learning, specifically how it differs from its opposite, passive learning. Active learning is something that we know can make a significant difference in student learning and outcomes if implemented well, and can be implemented in any modality, online, blended, or in person. So we're going to briefly share some theories and strategies around active learning. Here are the questions we are going to address. What is active learning and how it differs from passive learning? Why does it work? We'll dive a little bit into the theory behind active learning. And then, how do I use it? We'll share some examples of how, with some small tweaks, you can implement active learning in your course. Let's start with doing just a little bit of active learning. Take some time to think about these two questions. You can hit pause and think to yourself, maybe jot down some notes. Think back to a time when you learned something really well. Something clicked. Maybe it was a technical skill, a concept, or even a hobby. Think of a time you learned something effectively. What were you doing? Most people will say things like, I was trying it out. I was explaining it to someone. I made a mistake and I had to fix it. I applied it to something real. Hardly ever is it, I sat there and listened to someone lecture for an hour, or I read a book and didn't engage with the book at all. So for the active learning we just engaged with here are two concepts in the lower right corner of the slide. We had you construct some meaning around active learning, how it was a meaningful experience for you, and then activate some prior knowledge. What do I really know about this subject? Which is the second question. This information chart highlights the difference between passive versus active learning. On the left, we see things where students are just receiving information, listening, reading, watching a video, and observing. The information is being provided to them, but they aren't doing anything with it. On the right, we see active learning. It's any time students are asked to do something with the content connected to ideas or knowledge they already have. Explain it to someone. Maybe predict what might happen next, or recall information they've encountered previously. One point we really want to stress here: active learning doesn't have to include fancy technology, group work, or big involved hour-long activities. It can be 30 seconds long. It can happen between your lectures, slides, or in the middle of a video, or while they are reading. Oftentimes, it can be most effective when it's sprinkled into more passive activities as a way to break up and engage the brain. Why is active learning effective? We will briefly consider the following theories: constructivism, information processing theory, and situated learning. The research says the same thing over and over. Learning is something the learner does, not something that happens to them. It is an active process. The three overarching points here are tied to a learning theory grounded in decades of research. So let's start with constructivism, which emphasizes engagement over mere exposure. When we talk, we're lecturing. Students may hear us. When they take notes, they may record what we said. But constructivism says real learning happens when they make meaning, when they mentally connect new ideas to what they already know. Rather than just downloading information like a file on a computer and saying, "Yep, I've got the information, I've learned it forever now," human brains function more like building a house. Each new piece of material gets attached to something else, and eventually you have this holistic structure of how something works or functions and how each individual part is related to the whole. Active learning makes students start that building process by comparing different ideas, making predictions, checking assumptions, categorize things. Next is information processing theory, which emphasizes retrieval over review. Most of what students do when they study for a test or exam is review. They reread notes, they rewatch lectures, maybe if they're especially ambitious, they go back to the textbook or other resources. They feel productive, but those things don't actually build memory very effectively. All they're doing is encountering the information again. What actually helps build long-term memory and learning is pulling that information out and accessing it again. Every time you do that, it strengthens the neural pathways in the brain to that information and helps encode the information in the brain more effectively. This can be as simple as a quick warm-up question before a lecture, drill and practice quizzes, having them write a one-sentence summary of what you just said, anything to get them to practice recalling the information to encode it more deeply. Finally, there is situated learning, which emphasizes application over abstraction. Students often learn something in very abstract ways. We have them learn definitions, formulas, theories, all this raw information, but it can be difficult to dig those out of long-term memory when you need to use them. Situated learning says that knowledge sticks when it's used in context. You don't have to use elaborate case studies or scenarios. It can honestly be something as simple as asking students, where might this apply outside this classroom? When students connect concepts to real context, even small ones, They build more durable and flexible knowledge. When they can see how it might apply to their real world practice, it suddenly becomes more meaningful and relevant, making it more sticky. So, another brief active learning activity. Let's practice some recall. Take about a minute or so and jot down or think about a couple of sentences that summarize the most important or interesting idea about active learning you've heard so far. You can hit the pause button and take your time to think about this, maybe jot down your ideas. Okay, that little moment, that was retrieval. And you may have felt yourself sharpening what you heard earlier. That's exactly why these micro activities matter. Here are some simple moves you can make in your instruction that will engage students in active learning. You can see here in this chart that we have 3 columns: the activity, the move you make or the active shift that you make in the instruction, and how that changes things for students so far as getting them engaged in active learning. So here we have a lecture, and the strategy is pause and ask students to summarize a key idea in their own words. And what changes is this: that students retrieve and rephrase ideas, strengthening memory and understanding. Next is reading assignment. Add a brief annotation or find the claim in the reading. This changes things and makes it active, and it turns intake into analysis. Learners identify structure, evidence, and argument. For a demonstration or example problem activity, have students predict the outcome before showing it. This engages prior knowledge and primes retrieval, deepening later understanding. With a slide of key terms or concepts, ask learners to sort, match, or rank terms by importance. This encourages categorization and conceptual linking, improving retention and retrieval. While watching a video, give a guiding question to track or explain evidence as they watch. This promotes active processing and attention to reasoning rather than passive viewing. Finally, reviewing homework or quiz results. Have students show 2 to 3 common errors and ask what might have led to these mistakes. This normalizes error analysis and promotes reflection on reasoning, helping learners anticipate pitfalls. Now that we have arrived at the end of this presentation, please ponder the following questions. On a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you that you can implement some active learning in your class? What's one small active learning move you could use in your class? If you would like to learn more about how to integrate active learning in your teaching practice, reach out to the Faculty Success Center for a consultation with one of our instructional designers. You can reach us at fschelp@kvcc.edu, or you can call 269-488-4715.